Hey juniors, today is Wednesday and we're going to go ahead and continue reading our new book, which is Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's Dilemma. So make sure you have out your guided practice worksheet in front of you and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at some of our objectives. The first is I can identify a central idea in a nonfiction text, and the second is I can identify author's purpose in a nonfiction text. If you recall, these are the same objectives from yesterday, so we're just going to be applying them to a video and to the next chapter of our book. Go ahead and answer the following question. What does nonfiction mean? Right, so nonfiction means that it's not nonfiction means that it is real, it is not fiction, it is not fake. So what we know about our text is that it's nonfiction, which means that the author is presenting to us a lot of information that is true. So let's talk about author's purpose. We went over the definition yesterday, but we're going to go ahead and copy it again now. So go ahead and write this on your worksheet. You can pause this video if you need more time, but I'm going to move on. So author's purpose means the reason the author is writing the text. He or she is writing to inform, persuade, or entertain us. Now, answer the following question. Can the author have more than one purpose in their text? Right, so the answer is yes, you can have more than one purpose. You can be writing to inform and persuade, or inform, persuade, and entertain, any combination of these things. So go ahead and answer the next question. What is Michael Pollan's purpose in writing the introduction of our text from yesterday? Right, so his purpose for writing the introduction yesterday was to both let us know about how our food is produced to inform us, but also to persuade us to eat in a different type of way, which he's going to explain the further along we get in the book. So, that's Michael Pollan. Those are his purposes. Yesterday's in Omnivore's Dilemma, we learned about two main things. The first was about potatoes. And if you remember, the potatoes he was talking about were full of chemicals and pesticides and things like this. So right here on the left side of your screen, you have a picture of potatoes with all sorts of chemicals on them. And that's what happens to our potatoes before we eat them. Now, can you remember what the second thing we learned about yesterday was? Correct. We also talked about cows. And so on the right, you have a picture of a feedlot. You have all of the cows bellying up to the troughs on the side of the road, and they're sort of in a line. And all these mounds here are all the poop that's piling up. And that's where our meat comes from. So today, we are going to be doing two things. The first is to watch a video, which is going to be a summary of the next chapter of our book, which is all about corn. After we finish that, we're going to go ahead and start reading the next chapter, only a couple of pages, and that is specifically about cows and the new farms that Michael Pollan is visiting. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me switch to our video. Let's see. Here we go.
You know, when I wanted to understand the industrial food system, what I set about doing was very simple. I wanted to trace the source of my food. When you go through the supermarket, what looks like this cornucopia of variety and choice is not. There is an illusion of diversity. There are only a few companies involved, and there are only a few crops involved. What really surprised me most as I followed that food back to its source, I kept ending up in the same place, and that was a cornfield in Iowa. So much of our industrial food turns out to be clever rearrangements of corn. Corn has conquered the world in a lot of ways. I mean, it is a remarkable plant. 100 years ago, a farmer in America could grow maybe 20 bushels of corn on an acre. Today, 200 bushels is no problem. That's an astonishing achievement, for which breeders deserve credit, for which fertilizer makers deserve credit, for which pesticide makers all deserve credit.
In the United States today, 30% of our land base is being planted to corn.
That's
largely driven by government policy that, in effect, allows us to produce corn below the cost of production. The truth of the matter is we're paid to overproduce, and it was caused by these large multinational interests. The reason our government's promoting corn is the Cargills, the ADMs, Tyson, Smithfield, they have an interest in purchasing corn below cost of production. They use that interest and that extensive amount of money they have to lobby Congress to give us the kind of farm bills we now have.
The Farm Bill, which should really be called a food bill, codifies the rules of the entire food economy. Farm policy is always focused on these commodity crops because you can store them. We encourage farmers to grow as much corn as they can grow, to get big, to consolidate. We subsidize farmers by the bushel.
We produced a lot of corn, and they came up with uses for it.
We are now engineering our foods. We know where to turn to for certain traits like mouthfeel and then flavors, and we bring all of these pieces together and engineer new foods that don't stale in the refrigerator, don't develop rancidity. Of course, the biggest advance in recent years was high fructose corn syrup. You know, I would venture to guess, if you go and look on the supermarket shelf, I'll bet you 90% of them would contain either a corn or soybean ingredient. And most of the time it'll contain both.
Corn is the great raw material. You get that big, fat kernel of starch, and you can break that down and reassemble it, and you can make high fructose corn syrup, and you can make maltodextrin and diglycerides and xanthan gum and ascorbic acid, all those obscure ingredients on the processed food. It's remarkable how many of them can be made from corn. Plus, you can feed it to animals.
Corn is the main component in feed ingredients, whether it's chicken, hogs, cattle, you name it.
Increasingly, we're feeding the corn to the fish, whether we're eating the tilapia or the farm salmon. We're teaching fish how to eat corn. The fact that we had so much cheap corn really allowed us to drive down the price of meat. I mean, the average American is eating over 200 pounds of meat per person per year, and that wouldn't be possible had we not fed them this diet of cheap grain. Since you're selling corn at below the price of production, the feedlot operator can buy corn at a fraction of what it costs to grow, so that all the animals are sucked off of all the farms in the Midwest. There is a spider web of roads and train tracks all around the country moving corn from where it's being grown to these CAFOs. Cows are not designed by evolution to eat corn. They're designed by evolution to eat grass. And the only reason we feed them corn is because corn is really cheap, and corn makes them fat quickly.
Where are you putting your hand?
I'm actually inside the rumen, that first compartment of the stomach. It's kind of hard to see. You can see the liquid part here.
Wow. Does that hurt the calf?
No. There's microorganisms, bacteria in the rumen, millions of them. The animals evolved on consuming grass. There's some research that indicates that the high corn diet results in E. coli that are acid resistant. And these would be the more harmful E. coli.
So you feed corn to cattle. And E. coli, which is a very common bug, evolves, and a certain mutation occurs. And a strain called E. coli 0157H7 appears on the world stage. And it's a product of the diet we're feeding cattle on feedlots, and it's a product of feedlot life. The animals stand ankle deep in their manure all day long, so that if one cow has it, the other cows will get it. When they get to the slaughterhouse, their hides are caked with manure. And if the slaughterhouse is slaughtering 400 animals an hour, how do you keep that manure from getting onto those carcasses? And that's how the manure gets in the meat. And now this thing that wasn't in the world, it's in the food system.
And that's everything. So go ahead and close your Chromebooks and let's get started for the rest of the day.